How's it going, guys? So I wanted to let everybody know that we got the state and local jobs numbers for May this morning, actually. And I just wanted to go over some of that information, let you know what I'm seeing in it. Maybe if there's anything that jumps out at me that I think is worth passing along, which I think there is. And I would just say before people kind of write this off, because I know a lot of folks do, they'll just kind of look at the national figures and then they'll move on and say, no, I do think there's value here. I mean, even if they are likely overstated, I would just say yes. I mean, you have to sort of see it through that lens, but yes, they are directionally accurate. Okay. That being said, okay, what I am noticing is just back to this idea of overstatement. They continue to just be revised lower. No different state, local. Okay. When you look at the non-sampled lagged version of this data, which I do pull it at a local level, that's what you see as well. So the other thing too, and this has been an ongoing theme, is there's just a lot of continuation of healthcare and government job growth that's very lopsided, which in and of itself tends to be a textbook recessionary indicator. And again, it's not going to look the same across many markets, but that is the overall trend. Even the type of healthcare jobs that some of these markets are adding are not the same across, from a place like Philadelphia to say like Nashville. They are fairly different, and I'll get into that later. But okay, some of the markets that are really starting to show their true colors in terms of just overall weakness, and these are some of the markets that I just don't hear people talking about. And it's kind of reminds me of people like, oh, well, all this, this housing issue is limited to Florida and Texas, and now it's spreading. Okay, I mean, guys, everybody just needs to take a step back and quit being naive. I mean, money doesn't grow on trees. This is insane. People have lost their minds, man. I mean, that's like saying interstate commerce isn't real. I mean, do you understand like just how just completely out of your mind you have to be to think that way? All right, Atlanta. I'm looking at the numbers right now. I'll save you the trouble of having to look at my charts here because I know some people can get a little overwhelmed with them, and it makes more sense because I put it together. Okay, as of May, year-over-year percent, non-farm payrolls is now at 0.06. 0.06%. Okay, for perspective, we were talking about, it looked like that in spring of 2008 and the fall of 2001. And I think most people know those periods in history relatively well, especially if you're paying attention to this. Some other markets, Indianapolis doesn't look great. Kansas City, St. Louis, Asheville, that one's been sort of ongoing. There's been some Helene impact, but it's not really recovering. Bozeman, Montana. I mean, I would say those four, and they're all very, especially in size. Bozeman's very small on a relative basis. But like leisure and hospitality looks really, really rough. And just like the very cyclical industries look rough in those markets. And I think Bozeman is an interesting study because you've had a lot of like out-of-state California people move there, that's sort of the stereotypical oversimplification. But it's just also, you've got like pockets of even the surrounding Bozeman area, a lot of ultra wealthy, like billionaires who've got second homes and they're just out there for the view. Yellowstone Club. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I would just say this about Bozeman in general, it is a relatively younger area with a lot of seasonal workers. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and you're seeing even like the airport traffic slowed fairly sharply there. So, I mean, there are broader implications, especially for housing as well. So I kind of think of that as like a classier version of Vegas, maybe. I don't know. Okay, some other areas. I mean, Detroit continues to look just bad, but that's been really an ongoing story for, we'll call it really a couple of decades, but even more near term, post COVID, you're really starting to see job growth slow dramatically. Um, Even New York City, and I'm talking about New York City, okay, not this broader, very large MSA. Finance and insurance jobs have actually gone negative year over year for the past few months. If you know anything about the jobs there, and there's a lot of other industries sort of tied at the hip there as well that are also seeing some very outsized weakness too. But I mean, look, I could go on and on and on. Here's what I will say, especially, I mean, like Denver. I mean, I've been talking about that one for a while. I mean, I would say just Denver, Austin, Nashville. They have on paper like the quality, the same, similar qualities from a housing standpoint. And I will say that until I'm blue in the face, and people here locally are still wondering why inventory for sale just continues to move. But okay, back to employment. Sorry for the tangent. West Coast, East Coast. You think of some very large metro areas: LA, San Francisco, New York, the entire New York metropolitan area, even Philadelphia. Okay, the bulk of jobs there, kind of back to this idea, is just almost exclusively healthcare and government. I think in LA it really is just those two. It's very outsized if you were to just look at, say, like healthcare jobs in New York and Philadelphia. But when you peel back the layer of like what rolls up into healthcare, that is where things get really interesting, in my opinion, because when they report healthcare, they're bundling that with social assistance, usually for consolidated reporting purposes, the bulk of which is healthcare, but they are sort of like right there together if you want to think about something like CMS and Medicaid. Speaking of Medicaid, a place like Philadelphia, specifically Philadelphia County, has a very high share of Medicaid enrollees. And so when you look at those healthcare jobs, it is actually a lot of like Medicaid related social assistance jobs. Think substance abuse sort of issues, behavioral health issues, just loosely speaking. Whereas in a lot of other markets, like, I mean, normally what you see is something like, just if you were just looking at healthcare, set aside social assistance jobs, remember healthcare is the bulk of it. That's primarily hospitals and offices of physicians. There are markets where you are seeing job growth there, and you are seeing these more sort of secular demographic investing trends and job growth trends of something like home health and even senior care offerings, which look very different across different models. What I am saying is that it's not necessarily when people want to get bullish on something like all these healthcare jobs, and they'll spin it whichever way they want, and they'll say, well, it's all these doctors or this. No, it's not. A lot of these models that you see these days are geared towards, like, it's what I consider to be a physician practice management mutation. So in other words, rather than rolling up, if I'm just thinking about it from a provider standpoint, rather than rolling up a bunch of physicians, maybe you have a similar service, but it's geared towards allied health professionals. And that's like, and I'm just at a very high level, I'm just using this term loosely. Think about it like clinical people, but below the doctor level. So autism has been a big one. You can even have like clinical psychology models that look like that. Maybe they have a telehealth offering that's sort of tied to it as well. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, home health, if you want to think about that, I mean, people get into the doctor to, therapists, like ratios or all those sorts of things. That is where jobs are going, and it even shows up in the wage numbers as well. Home health, the projections for job growth there are astounding, and part of that is because we're just getting older as a country. So we do have job growth, but is it good job growth? I don't think that it really is. We already know that we've had dual income households for decades. I've even shown that all the way down to a county level. I mean, I literally showed it for Nashville, Davidson County, literally all the way back to 1970. It's been there for the entire time. Women are already in the workforce. There's not, kind of tying this all back to something like housing, there's not that incremental household income growth that people think is going to occur. It's just not. And we have too many homes as well. But I will say that until I'm blue in the face. And I've heard people say, well, what about like all these self-employed individuals and this and that? I mean, look, first off, if you want to think about a cookie cutter example, okay, an Uber driver is not going to be a millionaire. They're just not. You can look at something like, and maybe I'll get into this in a later video, but non-employer statistics. It's a really interesting data set where it combines a lot of IRS data, and individuals like that they're living in poverty. Or, I mean, that's just one sort of segment of, gig work, or what are oftentimes unincorporated self-employed individuals that don't have, employees. A realtor. Man, they made out like bandits, but even when you look at that data, it's not good. I mean, gross receipts are down. I don't know what people are doing here. I don't know why people think that we're going to be in some new bull market unless they start handing out money. I mean, like, at this point, by the time all these revisions get in and people understand or appreciate just how loosely we define employment because of something like being like these self-employed individuals, I think a lot of folks are going to be confused. So, I mean, it is what it is. Better to know than not know is the way I think of it. But that being said, look, I provide like one cut of this employment data at a metropolitan level. It's the data series that produces the unemployment rate, and I've actually trended that as well as the components of the unemployment rate, the unemployment level and the employment level over on the website, as well as provided the metro level rent and real estate data. And it's even cut by property type. It's trended well back in time, so folks can just kind of let the data be your guide. And again, that's free. So just hey, go check that out. Hopefully that's helpful to some folks out there. Okay, the website, by the way, is KinneyCapitalAdvisory.com, and that information can be found on the data tab. So I will quit rambling, and yeah. Okay, guys, have a good one.